Hi there, dog folk. This week I've been really thinking about who lighten up dogs really are. So many dogs struggle in so many different ways to cope with modern life, and Lighten Up is designed to help them. So, lighten up dogs are those that we might think of as fearful, anxious, territorial, protective, predatory, even high drive, impulsive, frustrated, even those who are missing out on essential parts of their early learning and socialization. They might be obsessed by novelty. Understandably, we might feel really uncomfortable about using labels like aggressive, and especially when doing so can end up with catastrophic consequences. So many guardians might use the word reactive to describe their dogs, but what does that even really mean? Reactive is a label that's given frequently to dogs, even though we don't really have a common understanding of what it might mean. And all labels can have the same defects and be a hindrance to understanding. Often we understand terms like fearful, and that can make it hard for people to understand that the dog who's barking or lunging at them is actually afraid. We don't expect fearfulness to look like that. You and I probably do, though, have the same understanding, the same idea about what a fearful dog looks like, and it's a little less nebulous as a label than reactive. So labels are a shortcut in thinking and language. The cognitive processes of labels help us speed up our thinking, although sometimes that can cause us problems. Words like reactive become shortcuts. So instead of saying my dog's barking and lunging at strangers who come within 50 metres of us, we say they're reactive. And instead of having to explain very carefully to the vet that my dog, cowers when the vacuum cleaner comes out, that they shrink away with their tail between their legs, that their upper lip, that their lower lip, reveals their bottom teeth, and their upper lip is retracted so that the upper lip is puffed out, and their spine is curved so that their shoulders and rear end are down, and their hind feet are closer to their front feet compared to normal, and their ears are pulled back dorsally and they pant and drool, I can just say my dog is afraid of the vacuum. It's so much easier. Thanks to the powers that be for words, labels and shortcuts. The problem with such labels is that both the person who said it needs to understand what the word means, and the person listening also needs to understand what the word means. Labels can cloak a wealth of issues. They can be used inaccurately to describe behaviour resulting from health problems or simply from lack of training. They prevent us from truly looking at the problem and understanding the cause behind it. People also like labels because they sound like diagnoses, and giving out a diagnosis makes us sound like we're smart. We're humans. We're going to human to the best of our humanity. What's more helpful is a clean description of what the dog does. Go back to basics and answer simple questions like when, where, what did it look like, how long did it last, who was the behaviour directed at, what were the guardians doing. We need to understand what the behaviour looks like. We also need to understand how long it takes for the behaviour to occur. We need to understand how intense the behaviour is, how long it lasts, where it happens, and what or who causes it. In their book Dog Bites, Professor Daniel Mills and Dr. Carrie Westgarth explain that there are 4 things that are useful when we're understanding behaviour. That's a description of the behaviour itself, the context, the emotions underpinning the behaviour, and an understanding of the function of behaviour. When we understand these factors, it helps us better understand the dog in front of us. It also helps us to find other people whose dogs are experiencing the same problems that ours are. It helps us find treatment programs that are likely to work efficiently and effectively for our dogs. Whether we're guardians or professionals, we need to define our terms before we start any work. We also need to accept that shortcuts sometimes stand in the way of truly understanding our dogs. You may feel that other words like sensitive or responsive are actually a better fit. In fact, using them is just as flawed as calling our dogs reactive. Watering down labels doesn't make them any less of a label. It doesn't actually help us understand or change behaviour. All it is just another word. So sure, you might think it's a kinder word or a better word, it fits better, but it's still just a word. Changing a word won't magically open a cave of treasures like Open Sesame did for Alibaba. We need to find solutions by understanding that calling our dogs a different adjective and refining the label actually doesn't help very much at all. What is helpful is knowing, what do you see? When do you see it? And then, and only then, can we start to understand it. And then, and only then, can we start to use that shortcut with others when we're clear what we're talking about. I'm not comfortable using labels. I know it's unhelpful and it lends to stereotyping, prejudice, cognitive sloppiness, laziness, bias. We've got 3 months of material coming out on that specific topic to weed out various other factors and to help us understand the links between reactivity, whatever that might mean to you, and other emotionally driven behaviours. There remains one thing to say. I'm going to get tired of putting air quotes around reactive or sticking so-called in front of the word, so-called reactive, as if to say, that we appreciate that it's just a label. So from here on in, I'm just going to use it liberally without marks or qualifiers, but I want you to remember that it is inexact, it is imprecise, and it's a broad label for a whole raft of behaviour. I'm just using it as a shortcut. That's mainly because I'm lazy, but also because you're going to get sick of me writing, so-called reactivity or putting things in air quotes every time I use that word, or describing every single behaviour that I want you to remember that might fit under that kind of umbrella term. And what the hell, it's as good as any other adjective. Prince, when he was a symbol, he was still Prince, right? Next time I'm going to share with you a really neat definition of what reactivity really is. I promise you that when you see dogs barking and lunging and you feel that little light bulb pinging on to say, hey, that's a reactive dog, you're going to understand that term a whole lot better when we've got a cleaner definition. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to know when new content is coming up, and don't forget to hit the like button if you want to share the love.